Hey everybody, welcome to the show today. This is Love+Relo, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am so blessed and honored to be here with Philip Berry, president of Philip Berry Associates. Philip, how are you today, sir?
I am doing very well, and everything's going pretty fine. I can't complain about it, quite
That's
frankly.
right. That's right. And nobody would care if we did, right? So we might as well just keep it moving, right?
Only my mother would care.
There you go. Thank God for moms. Hey, everybody, if you're out there right now, we got a wonderful show today. Philip is an HR expert, talent expert, performance expert. We're going to be talking about how relocation kind of plays into talent strategies. We're also going to be talking about executive coaching and how to upgrade our performance. We're going to be talking about Philip's experience managing, overseeing kind of, the HR role at a large Fortune 500 company and his thoughts on relocation from that perspective, both as someone who kind of, administered large programs, but also was a customer of a program once or twice, as on his assignments overseas as well, and what he gleaned from those things, as well as talking about DE&I initiatives, DE&I 3.0, things like that. So get active in the comments. I want to know your thoughts, your questions for Philip. Hit that like button. Check in with us. Let us know who you are, where you are, what you're up to today. We've got, look at this. First one checking in. Ray Abbott from Tippett Richardson in Vancouver, Canada is in the house. Canada, Ray, you beat Jamie. Jamie's usually pretty punctual. Cheers from sunny Mississippi. Jamie, watch those Canadians, man. They're gonna get your they're gonna get you there. No, leave it in the leave your questions in there. Phil, first, where in the world are you joining us from?
Well, right now I'm in Fort Lauderdale. I have a place in Manhattan, New York, yeah, and also in Fort Lauderdale. So I've been down in Fort Lauderdale for the past 4 months, actually.
That is like the dream. A place in Manhattan and a place in Florida.
Yeah, I've had it like that for about 13 years. So I think going into the rest of after this year, I'm going to be spending a little bit more time down here in Fort Lauderdale because I can work anywhere, quite frankly.
I'll be honest with you. I've met a lot of executive coaches, and that's the best sales pitch I've ever heard. I got a place in Manhattan. I got a place in Florida. I'm like, sir, teach me your ways, sir. This is great. We're gonna be having fun.
Work from anywhere.
I love it. We're gonna be talking about work from anywhere. I want to hear your thoughts on this as well, because this is really this concept of work from anywhere, work from home, remote work, and what does it all mean? This has really been kind of a disruptive force in the relocation sphere, as I'm sure it is the rest of the HR community. So I want to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe we might even start with that. Natalie Marshall Rose, who's going to be on the show this month as well. Hello from sunny Florida. Hit that like button. Hi, Philip and Ben. It's Nina from the Sweet Faith down in H-Town.
How you doing, Nina?
There you go. Nina's amazing. I want to hear your thoughts on this, though. We talked about work from anywhere. You're in Florida. I'm in Texas. I spent most of the day in a hotel lobby, at a remote work situation. What does work from anywhere? First of all, is work from anywhere real? Is that a real thing? Can we really do that?
No, it really is. It is a real thing because what you want to do. Matter of fact, for the past 20 years, when I was an HR executive with Colgate-Palmolive, so I had individuals reporting to me in over 60 countries, Russia, Romania, Chile, Argentina, Dominican Republic. And so I was working with them and I had people reporting to me in those locations. And we were able to work on projects together. I was able to do training in those areas. So it's really something that I have been used to for most of my work life. So yes, it's real. A number of people now are just beginning to come in contact with this phenomena. But there is a way to be flexible in terms of where you're working and how you're working. And so now a number of people in this new pandemic, they're saying, well, we have to work from a place other than our office. And then so how do we, for executives, the question for many of them has been, how can I have people working for me? Can I trust them, to do the work? And so we have to overcome that shift in trusting our people to do the work and setting up the type of environment and the resources so that way people can partner with others no matter where they are, so that they can work. When you work globally, and my whole experience been, the reason why it's not unique to me is because I consider myself a global citizen. So as a global citizen, it's just a matter, okay, well, what time is it? Do I have to do a project in Malaysia? Just means I have to get up a little earlier, in order to do that. So I can work Malaysia and California at the same time. I mean, so it's something that you get used to when you begin. It's a whole different phenomenon in terms of how you work, and that determines where you're going to work and what type of work you're going to do.
I love it. I want to ask the audience, because we got a ton of people checking in. A lot of people love you out there, Philip, by the way. I'm going to get to that real quick here. I want to know your thoughts. You're watching this out there. If you're in the comments, if you're watching this from home right now, first of all, do me a favor, hit that like button. That lets everybody know that we're on. Also, what are your thoughts? Leave it in the comments. What are your thoughts about work from anywhere? What is the biggest obstacle to work from anywhere? I want to know. I'm going to ask Philip that question, but first we're going to check in with people and see what's going on. Jana Chezanowski, hello, happy from Rio to see this show. We got Brazil in the house.
Hi,
Team
Jana.
Glomo's in the house. This is awesome. There you go. Carlene Tisdale from H-Town in the house. Tim Quirk, Western New York's representing. Appreciate you.
Good time.
Shanna Crawford from E.E. Ward, the award-winning E.E. Ward, who was on the show yesterday. Fantastic. Tom Brune checking in. Since Phil quoted Patti Smith on LinkedIn yesterday, people have the power. I love
Tom,
it.
thanks a lot. I think that we could put a saxophone to that one, Tom, because I know that that's one of your tools.
Yep. Tom's a big music guy.
Yeah.
Kathy says, you have one of my favorite people on your show today.
Hey, Kathy, how's it going?
Look at the love. Doesn't it feel good?
Yeah,
People say, why do you call it Love and Relo? Because there's so much love. Why are we talking about, don't bury the lead. There's so much love here. Mike Falia, greetings from Southern California, sunny and 80 today. Mike, that sounds good. What's the temp over there, Philip, in Fort Lauderdale?
72.
You got me beat.
Cloudy. Yeah.
64 here, but I'll take it. Mary Riley, hello from sunny Sarasota. Miss our days at Colgate.
Mary, yes, indeed.
Look at that. That's fantastic. Mary, I want to know your thoughts for work from anywhere. Is it real? What's the biggest obstacle? Richard Majewski, pleasure to be your Ben. Philip, looking forward to the show. Natalie checking in. Look at this. Shauna checking in. Team Glomo, Danny Herskowitz in the house from Dallas. Glomo HQ. Appreciate you, Danny. We've been working on site. So here we go. I'm going to hop in. Danny right here. Danny's from New Jersey, up in your neck of the woods, right? Danny's from New Jersey, but I brought him down this week so we could collaborate. So we have a distributed workforce. We got Rio de Janeiro, Jana. We've got Danny in New Jersey. We've got Rhiannon now in New Orleans, and we have a distributed workforce. But I felt it was necessary to bring Danny in this week and really kind of collaborate with him, right? And we'll probably be doing this next week with Jana as well and Danny. What is the biggest obstacle, in your opinion, or thing that companies have to get over to really execute a distributed workforce or work from anywhere scheme? Philip?
For me, it's trust your people. Trust. I mean, that's the biggest obstacle. That individuals feel, well, if a person is not sitting right where I'm sitting, that they're not working. And so unfortunately, that means that there has to be a mind shift from what I call the Frederick Taylor school of thought, where individuals have to work right where you are. And if they're working where you are, if you could put your hands on them, then it means that they're working. Yeah, so you have to have a paradigm shift from the standpoint of your thought process. What is it that is required for individuals to do the work? And it doesn't mean that you need to be right on top of them. It means that they need to have very clear goals and objectives. There needs to be clarity on what the output is, and that you have to have agreement on how you're going to work together and what are the resources that you need in order to affect change no matter where you are. So the biggest obstacle is that people have a narrow mindset in terms of how they approach this. They don't think about it systemically. They don't think about how they can really partner and what does it take in order to partner with people. It doesn't mean that you have to be right in the same place. You can partner with people wherever they are. And also you have to get out of a thought process. Well, if you're in my time zone, then I can communicate with you better. No, you can communicate with people no matter what the time is. Maybe you have to get up earlier. You have to stay up late. It's a 24/7 global world that we're working in. And when you have a concept like that and you see the world differently, then you're going to be able to operate differently. So it means that maybe from the time that I might decide if I'm going to ship a product and receive a product, and where the raw materials are going to come from, who the people are that are going to work on that, all of those entities, all of those elements are going to be in different places. They're not going to be in the same place. Because if they are in the same place, then you're not thinking broad enough in terms of how you really want to systemically impact and create the change and be effective and productive on a total holistic basis.
Yeah, I mean, I like what you're saying there. I mean, if everybody's in the same place, maybe you're missing the boat, because I feel like we talk to people who are hiring talent all the time, and we talk about every time we have a conversation, we're weighing, does this person need to be in the office or is this a remote position? And we talk to our clients all the time. When you open it up to remote, now you're going after the best and brightest, no matter where they happen to sit.
Yeah, exactly.
Versus who happens to be in my backyard. And if you're in Kenosha, Wisconsin, or if you're in Chicago, Illinois, I mean, the talent pool is just different. And so I think that you bring up a really great point. And I'm going to ask you, we were born and raised in an in-person world, and now we find ourselves in a virtual world in many ways. And I'm going to ask you and the folks who are watching, what are the skill sets or the gaps maybe that we need to overcome to adapt to this digital world? But we have a couple other people who are suggesting some other obstacles before we start solving. Natalie over here has some great points. Yes, working from anywhere is possible, but the biggest hurdle is immigration and the taxes. It's a true global mobility answer right there. I appreciate you, Natalie. I've worked remotely for almost 11 years. Natalie, does that mean you're out of compliance? How do you solve for that? What about the taxes? Very curious about this. We do have compliance issues, right? I mean, that is a thing, She also offers company culture is important. This is one I've heard some good arguments about, Philip. What do you think about this? When you hire people into a distributed workforce, how do you create a cohesive company culture, and how do you do things like career pathing and the networking and things within the company?
So the first thing is that you have to develop what I call a cross-cultural framework from the standpoint of how you manage. And that is that you need to understand that if I'm in the United States and I'm working with somebody who is in China, or I'm working with somebody who is in Latin America, or somebody who is in South Africa, there are different country cultures that individuals operate out of. And what you want to do is to develop a company framework that takes into account some of the best things that are happening in different parts of the world, and understand the diversity of ways that people will make decisions and how they are able to communicate with each other across the chasm of those cultures. And then develop an agreed upon framework that consists of respect, understanding, communication, trust. And those are some things that can work across. Also developing people, listening. Like there are a set of principles like that can go across any company culture, or any culture that is in a particular country framework.
Yeah.
And if you can develop that understanding, that shared understanding, then you're going to be much stronger in terms of how you work with that. I see it at Melanie, matter of fact, she and I, we've talked over the years, about some of these in terms of when she says, well, how do you overcome or create cultural intelligence in a remote world? The fact is that you have to have a set of understandings and great communication and great listening skills. What the problem that Americans have is that we like to talk a lot. And we feel that communication is let me talk, as opposed to communication. If you're working with people who are out of either Asia or out of the Middle East, maybe it's listening. Maybe what I need to understand is a little bit more about where you're coming from and what's important to you before I jump in with my way of operating. Maybe I need to expect. Matter of fact, I remember working a deal when in Turkey, where and this was to combine two companies together. Was working with mergers and acquisitions as part of the HR head when I was HR head in that particular part of the world. And what I had to do was to understand that people they wanted me to spend not just 2 days to try to get this merger working. They said to me, why don't you spend some time, go down the Bosphorus with us? Why don't you understand how we work and what's important to us? And without spending a lot of time in this example, when I went through after 2 months of doing this, going back, spending a lot more time there, the people, the mullah who was the head of one of the companies said, you know what was really important to us was that you would treat our people like family, because this is not just a company merger. You are merging two families together, and we want you to take care of them just like we would take care of them. So when you begin to get that type of an understanding in place, and if you can make that part of your company culture, then you're winning in terms of overcoming the chasm that exists in working with people in different nationalities.
Yeah, I love it. I love your answer there, and I'm gonna double click into that for a second. And by the way, Melanie, thanks you so much for all the mentorship and everything you've done for. So there's that. But Aaron kind of voices my thoughts on this. And your example, actually, I mean, I love your example, but it also kind of points to the importance of being in person, because you went to Turkey and you spent time, and I think that showing up also builds trust. And Aaron's question is the ability to walk over to someone's office and just talk face to face about something about being in the same room as someone that helps with the communication, maybe because you can really pick up on the vibe. This is so true for me as well. I mean, Danny came here, and Danny, I'm sorry, I'm putting our business straight, but Danny came here. Our company's growing, right? And with it, we have all these opportunities, and all this stuff's happening, and it's kind of like, oh gosh, it's getting scary, because it's like, oh, so much opportunity, it's so amazing. But there's something about just sitting down across from somebody and sharing with one another to build that trust. How do we create those moments?
Well, see, I mean, I had a number of situations let me just give a little bit more on my background. I was the VP of HR for the emerging market, which consisted of all of Russia, Eastern Europe, all of the Middle East, all of Africa, from South Africa to Zambia, Zimbabwe, up to Kenya, across from the east to the west side. Then another time I was VP of HR for all of Latin America and Central America and the Caribbean. And another time I was VP of HR for Paris when I was living in Paris. In each of those situations, what I found is that, yes, there is a face-to-face that you want to have, but that is not the only way that you communicate with people. It's in between the time that you're meeting with them face to face when you are continuing to develop the relationship. And so you have to think about developing a relationship with any country or any entity is a spectrum of being present and not being present, being there and not being there. And you have to utilize your activities and initiatives in both places to a way which does what? It bridges the gap of communication and trust. So you can be in front of people and they can still feel that, well, this person is really being very autocratic. This person is a bully. How do you overcome that when you are using the medium, and the medium of communication is a reality of our human existence? That's what we have to get over. That this is going to be the new reality, that we're not going to go back. The new normal doesn't consist of going back to where we're all going to be working together. We're not going to be able to be in the same place at the same time. So we have to use every tool at our disposal to develop communication and build trust, build understanding, and build cooperation and build collaboration. All of those are those are the principles that we're looking for. It's not a matter of being physically present. It's a matter of operating with principles that help to improve the working relationship that we have overall.
I love it. I love it. I agree with you. And in fact, Natalie's echoing something similar. So you're talking about our set of core values: change is inevitable, allow for change to happen, and empower your teams. She's giving me a hard time over here. I'm compliant, always have been. I can't wait till we get to be on the show together too. She's gonna give me a hard time here. That's great. I'm just messing with you here. Sandra's saying my current company has done a great job of creating strong and enriching company cultures, even with a remote workforce. And yes, still need cultural business skills, awareness, and passion of mine since well before the pandemic influences.
Yeah.
Very interesting. As we talk about the skills that are needed to overcome those gaps, Richard's saying, isn't it hard to merge cultures when languages divide?
Well, I mean, one of the things when I was, let me give you an example of my work in Africa. So, because I've studied French and Spanish, I also studied Swahili. And one of the things that I found as an American is that maybe what I need to do, I need to learn as much as I can about some of the concepts behind certain languages, because then that helps people to feel that I am walking not in American shoes, but I'm trying to look at the world from the way they look at it. And so there's so many examples that one would have in terms of words that you can use, and if you can understand them better, then you're going to be able to understand the culture a little bit more. Quick example: learned a few words in Arabic. So I was working with the team in Egypt, and so and this particular we're working on a product development project, and so all of us were around the table. You had these people who were very educated, the engineers and the marketing people. So then I said, okay, are we really, we've indicated the critical path. And this is January, by March, by May, we're going to have this launch, right? Everybody said, yes, inshallah. What does that mean? That means if God wills it. All of a sudden, the individual introduced a word which created a sense of uncertainty, that I needed to understand in terms of going with this project. Now, the only thing that bothered me was when I'm going to the airport there. And so in the airport, then I said, do I have to stop at this sign here? And then the person, inshallah, because he said that the sign is just a mirror and the red light is just a suggestion. It doesn't mean that you stop. It means that you consider whether you're going to do it or not. So anyway, what I'm saying is that I needed, in order for me to be impactful, and I can go across the globe in the 60 countries that I've worked in, about things that I learned about local culture that helped me to get across the chasm. And I'm not going to always be fluent in all of the languages that I'm working in, but certainly the fact that I tried as an American is something that people appreciated. And therefore, they saw me in a different way because I tried to do that.
Yeah, I love that point there. Natalie's actually saying, no, come from a place of willingness to learn about others. That's a great technique. I love what you said, by the way, that, about that ambiguity, and saying yes, but with some ambiguity. Because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We're going to try to make it happen, Lord willing, as we say over here in the States, right? But it's the same thing, right? We're going to do our best, Lord willing. But we're getting into cultural differences, and we're getting into diversity of cultures. And I think this is a great jumping off point into DE&I, since it is February, and we're taking a spotlight on Black professionals this month, and also, issues around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I want to know, about this term D&I 3.0. What is the current generation of D&I, and what do we need to know about where we're heading?
When I was before I was at Colgate-Palmolive, I worked for Procter and Gamble a number of years, so as a young manager. So this is like late 70s, right? And so the term diversity was in play because it dealt with individuals who were trying to understand race and color. Well, we have moved from that quite a bit over the years to understand that there are a number of different aspects of diversity that people bring to the table. And if you look at it from the standpoint of what I call, well, I'll go into intersectionality later, but if you look at it from a standpoint that I can be a person who is differently abled, age is another diverse component that I bring. Country, background that people work from, all of those are different aspects of diversity. And it's not just usually what happens, person looks at me and then they say, okay, you're a Black male. Well, yes, but there's more to me. If I look at it from the standpoint of other aspects of diversity that I bring, then there are other things that there's a better understanding that you can get about who I am and what I'm about and what's important to me. And it's the same when I'm talking to other people. So, so Ben and I, you and I, we were just talking about, okay, I was born in New York, you in White Plains. Well, geography as an aspect of diversity in terms of how you look at things and how you understand things. So what needs to happen is that we need to be able to work across all of those different aspects of diversity and look at those aspects of diversity as a strength for organizations. And this is why inclusion and equity come into play, because with inclusion, you're not just talking about an appreciation and understanding of the rich array of differences that we bring. You're looking at how can we capitalize on all of those different aspects of diversity and use it as a way to help strengthen the way we work together and the way we live together, the way we cooperate, and also how we can move the business forward. How can we use that understanding in that way? So this is where, so 3.0, like unfortunately what's been happening over the last, there's been such a focus on just the legal affirmative action standpoints. But when you're looking at it from 3.0, you're looking at moving at it with an understanding of how diversity can improve the business or organization that you're operating in, and also how it can improve the community, and also how you can get the organizations to work more effectively in servicing and in marketing to the communities that they're operating in. Give you a lot of examples. Let me give you one quick one. And it doesn't include race or gender. It includes age. So working with Colgate-Palmolive, and so we found that when young men are going to the club, what they like to do is they like to have a toothpaste that, they go into the bathroom, they want a toothpaste that makes their mouth clean. So what we came up with was to deal with that particular diverse cohort was a small type of very packable toothpaste with a toothbrush in it that enabled individuals to be more effective and productive in developing relationships there. So that was something that dealt with young people. And another
I'm sorry, was that a formal term? Effective and productive in developing relationships at the club?
Yeah.
I love it. I'm picking up what you're putting down. This is great.
Another aspect is like, I use the United States. In New York, we found that people like to go to like Costco, the Walmart and all the number of other very large type of stores where you can get 10 of anything, very large quantities. Well, that really applies more to if you, like I lived in Cincinnati, so that worked very well there. But in Manhattan, I didn't have a lot of room for all of those things. So therefore, what had to happen is that I looked for companies who were making things that were suitable just for maybe my wife and I, as opposed to large families. So there, the diversity aspect I'm looking at is understanding the family makeup.
That's right. Yeah. You're looking for stuff that you're going to get at the corner store, the bodega, or whatever in New York, because you only got an apartment. You got a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom apartment. you don't got room for 18 rolls of toilet paper, or whatever.
And then how do you communicate with people? You want to communicate with people in the different languages that they have, and understand that languages are going to be different. So if a person is speaking Mandarin, no such thing as Chinese. People say, oh, I want to put something in Chinese. No such thing. It's either going to be in Cantonese or it's going to be in Mandarin. That's understanding the local cultures in that way. So that way you can communicate in the mediums that they communicate in. So if I want to communicate with people through commercials or through newspaper, then that's an aspect of diversity that I need to understand in terms of where do people go to get information about what they should be buying and what quantities they should be buying in. That's what the 3.0 is.
I love it. I love it. And I want to throw this out to the audience because I think there's an amazing opportunity to talk to someone who's not only an expert in diversity, equity, and inclusion, but also from a marketing standpoint as a company for like Colgate-Palmolive or Procter & Gamble, who sold, obviously to billions of people worldwide, different products and things like that. I mean, we're all out here, selling our company, our services, our products and things like this. So I think this is an amazing new take on it, frankly, that I've never actually really thought much about, to be honest. Most of the DE&I stuff that I've been talking about has either been in terms of inside of a company from a talent standpoint or been a supplier diversity, but never, not really thinking about it from how do we market to our customers. I do have a lot of questions on this. I want to prioritize the questions of the people out there in the audience. So put those in here. If you've got questions about, how do we, whether it be internal in the company or be external, how do we become more inclusive from a branding standpoint, from a sales and marketing standpoint, from a hiring practices standpoint, from a supplier diversity, throw it in there. I want to really make space for your questions for Philip here. Richard's going to share his comment. Wow, yes, age diversity. I remember back when I was about 30, so in the 1800s, and I was turned down for a job for being too old. Oh, wow. But Richard, look at that. You pivoted out of that and you kind of, figured out a way to become an entrepreneur. That's interesting. Very interesting. Love to hear more about those things. Melanie, Philip and I have many conversations about diversity of thought. How do we bring and celebrate difference beyond the obvious external features? First, how do we even see it or measure it or know that it's there? And isn't this kind of the root question that plagues us around DE&I, seeing beneath the surface? And what are your thoughts?
Well, what happens is that sometimes, unfortunately, when we see individuals, we look at what I call above the iceberg. So I look at a person, I see what their color is, and I see what their gender is. What we need to do is to have conversations that get deeper into other aspects that are below the iceberg. So for example, people who have different capabilities or different abilities, ways of living and working and education. Those are all different aspects of diversity. Looking at ethnicity, like some people thought, matter of fact, when I was living in Paris, some people said, well, what you want to do is you want to live over in a section of town where it's mostly English speaking people. And so I said, well, no, what I want to do, if I'm doing that, then I'm just living, I might as well just stay in Dallas or whatever, because I'm not going to learn a lot about the culture. So what we did was we moved to an arrondissement, which was closer to where people were who spoke different language, who were French. So that way my wife and I and our children could really delve into the language and get into the type of diversity of thought that people have. It has to do with reaching beyond yourself and going into the world of others. I mean, that's how we do that. And then celebrating, understanding that, and then celebrating that. Going to restaurants that are different, not just going to the same things that you did if you were living in Minneapolis, doing something very different altogether.
I love the idea of celebrating it too, because if you find it and celebrate it, it gives you more incentive to look for it. I think what happens is oftentimes, or what can sometimes happen, is that when we find diversity or difference, we stay away from it, or I don't want to talk about it, or I don't want to touch on it, or I don't want to acknowledge it's there, because to acknowledge it makes people feel uncomfortable. And by people, I mean maybe myself, right? And so I think that we have to get in the habit of celebrating it and being curious about it and getting to a place, because that's so much more constructive than
Yes.
the avoidance tactics I think we've been taking in the past.
And curiosity is the word. And what we want to do is to not be ethnocentric. We want to operate from a framework of cultural curiosity. We want to operate from a framework of empathy, where we can understand what is going on in the world of others, and do things that we haven't done before. Matter of fact, develop habits where we eat is going to be different. The people that we associate with, the movies that we watch. Go watch. I mean, there's certain habits that you can develop, that can help you, so that way you can be a lot more curious and understanding of different cultures, and immerse yourself in the world of others, so that way you can begin to appreciate and develop accordingly. So I think that in organizations, there's a big piece around this diversity and inclusion that deals with that. This is the other thing, though. There are 4 different aspects of diversity that are where diversity arenas, where diversity, equity, and inclusion operate. The first one, of course, people always think about, okay, well, let me hire some individuals, let me deal with training. But that's one component of it in terms of the workplace. But what you want to do also is to have individuals who are going to understand how the market operates, people outside of your organization, where you are selling your goods, where you're buying your goods. It even gets into, when you talk about supplier diversity, am I, with a first or second level contractor, am I using individuals who are either women owned or minority owned companies? And am I using them as a subcontractor in some of the work? What is it that they can bring that maybe I don't have in place already? And also from the standpoint of the community, how can I develop a different relationship with the communities that I'm operating in, so that way the people, the organizations that I support, the type of the schools that I might get students from in order to do internships, where I hire from. I mean, all of those are areas that one has to look at from the standpoint of trying to be a more diverse and a culturally oriented organization. Just developing it.
I love it, and you're bringing up so many questions in my mind. We've got comments coming in here and people checking in. Hello, gentleman, Jack from Philly. What's up, Jack? Good to see you, buddy. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the conversation as well. Get involved in the comments. I will prioritize your comments today. Shanna Crawford, EE Ward is huge in diversity, both in race and age. I'm actually one of the youngest employees of our company, and everyone has something to add and teach to the rest of the team. Trivia question, Philip. Did you know EE Ward Moving and Storage is the oldest continuously operating African-American company in the United States?
No,
matter of fact, 141 years.
I think I saw this in a podcast somewhere. Yeah, I did. No, I did see that. Yeah. I think it was one of your. I think it was one of your areas. In fact,
it was probably yesterday.
Yeah.
Paul Soley, hey Phil, great insights. Always give my love to Karen.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Look
Karen's
at that.
my wife, by the way.
So much love here in the real space. But you're talking about DE&I within companies, and you're talking also about marketing to communities, and how and how companies interact with communities. So I'm going to ask you kind of a question that bothers me sometimes. When we see companies out there that market a lot to African-American communities, and yet we look at the makeup of the executive team, we look at the makeup of a lot of the employees, and we don't see the same, especially at the senior levels, we don't see the same diversity, frankly, on those boards and those executive boardrooms. What's that disconnect about, and how do we fix that?
Well, I think that, like, if I look at those 4 sectors I was talking about: workplace, workforce, marketplace, and community, that one needs to have a consistency across all of those different sectors. So there, what we're looking at is an organization that is not systemically organized in terms of its strategy. in order to increase diversity, equity, inclusion across all of those different sectors. And so it takes a little bit more work to work in some of those other segments. For example, it means that from a standpoint, matter of fact, the way you can solve some of that is that, so say if you have an organization that wants to have a feeder pool of individuals so that way they can move up higher to executive leadership. Well, what you want to do is, from the standpoint of community, develop relationships with different organizations that can give you a better feeder pool into your organization. That's one. Two, what you want to do is that you have to have a strong succession planning and talent development program that works on skills and identifies people right when they're coming in the door. Quick example. I remember one, and I'll use this. This is fine. There's a person who is a general manager of one of an organization that I've been Colgate's operation in India, right? I remembered 20 years ago working with him, hiring him out of Lebanon, moving him to Poland in his career. Then he moved to Mexico, and then he moved over to Malaysia, and then over to India. And so what we were able to do was to develop all along his career, from the standpoint of career development, to develop a career track that would help to give him the skills and the competencies so that he could be globally effective. The goal was to make him a global leader. And I can look back at the annual report of a Colgate-Palmolive over my 20 years, including the person who is CEO now. Because my last position there, I was working for a CEO. You have a new CEO now. And I remember being involved in hiring him when he was an intern, and then progressing him through different parts of the world so that way he could develop the sensitivity and understanding so that he can operate at the level that he's at right now. I remember working with individuals who sometimes we have to make sure that we understand what is the path to the top of any organization. So I worked to get the treasurer of the organization and say, hey, look, talk with him and his wife, because anytime you're working on a relocation, it's not just the individual, you're working with the family. And so let me talk with the family. Let me talk with your wife about moving to Thailand, because if you do this and you move to another location, then after a while, you're going to be ready to move up to the top of the organization. I mean, I have so many examples in this area that I can go to that demonstrate that you have to have a program that starts from the beginning, feeds people in the right way. You have to cultivate leaders. Leaders are not just, they don't just come to you as leaders. They have to be cultivated. They have to be grown. And organizations that really care about their talent will do something in order to develop. And it's a long-term type of a plan. That's why I can look over something over a 20-year period. Now, some people, we're so short-term focused in U.S. companies where we're thinking, what are we going to get tomorrow? I think that we need to have a lot more programs in place to move women forward. When we're thinking about women, we also have to think about women of color. It's not just, we have to think about Latinos, Latinx, or Asian women, and finding a way to pathway and prepare those individuals so that way they can move to the top of an organization. You show me a company where that's not in place. You therefore show me a place where people don't care about taking the long-term view of developing the talent that's necessary.
I love it. Chris Benson checking in here. Long-term plans. Big fan there. Chris, you're out in Walmart right now, I think, right? He was also giving a shout out to BMS and Merck for standing up diverse suppliers in spaces they typically have not had the support to enter. I want to get back to that if we have a chance. But Natalie's spot on here. You'd be surprised how many companies do not have a career path for employees and have no global policy in place. Companies have to expand their thinking, and it starts with their actual human resources.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that disturbs me about companies is when they're thinking about moving a person over to a certain country, they don't think about it from the standpoint of how do we want to develop, what skills and competencies do we want this person to have so that way we round and we prepare them for other positions. How can we prepare them? So I developed a diversity succession planning process that looked at people over a 5-year period of time, looking at their next 2 assignments that they would have, not just the first assignment. Sometimes we look at assignments, moving people is just feeling, putting a round peg in a square hole or something like that. What we need to do is to look at how we can move people into the position that is going to mold them into being a global leader in the organization. And so I like to think, every time I was VP of HR, all of those different parts of the organization, I was looking at what were the next 2 or 3 moves, and moving people in different places. I was involved in moving a person who was LGBT down to Chile, moving a gay woman to Chile, and told the general manager there, you have to make her successful. I was involved in moving a person from Colombia over to China. Those are type of companies that take that type of outlook. Really are those type of companies that care about how they are developing their global policies, and they care about career pathing. Career pathing has to be, so the relocation people and talent people have to work together. They're not working together enough, and we need to have policies in place that help the family also, as the family is moving from one part of the world to another.
So I've got so many questions here. Chris has one. What are the next 2 to 3 moves? I think Chris is highlighting something you said, maybe he's asking for some free coaching right now. What are the next 2 to 3 moves for Chris Benson? No, but I think that's a great way to think about it. But okay, I'm gonna push back here and play a little devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
You've worked at these enormous companies, very thoughtful companies, very robust talent organizations. You've had the tools and you've had the multinational, footprint and opportunity to kind of shuffle the pieces, grab the skills, move the people around, and really rotate them through in order to create these amazing leaders and grow them, which I love what you said. Leaders aren't, born, they're created or something like that. And I love it. And so, but a lot of companies aren't as big as Colgate-Palmolive. What does a company of maybe just 100 people, 200 people do? Mm-hmm. Maybe a 1 or 2 person HR department, right?
Yeah.
What can they do to make?
I'll give a good example. So the other thing is, I was the chief human resource officer for the Clinton Foundation when I retired or rewired from Colgate, and then before I started up my business. When I started up my business, I took a hiatus to go to the Clinton Foundation. So small organization, right? So what we did was to say, how can we move an individual from one particular function to another, maybe from the communication to the marketing organization, and also have them work with a certain group in this particular one was working in Haiti. Have them working with that, and then from there move to a healthcare part of the organization where they were doing that. You can move people across to give them a well-rounded experience. Additionally, person who happens to be we look at people too narrowly. So a person who is in HR, I said every person is going to be. I had like 5 or 6 people in my organization. I said, instead of just hiring a person who is just benefits and a compensation and a labor person, I'm going to have them switch in a training person. Then I'm going to have them do a stint working on a specific project in another area. So the person who is in benefits is going to learn how to train. The person who is in compensation is going to understand a lot more about putting policies in place. In fact, when I was at Procter, I developed my own career plan there. They didn't have this type of plan in place. So I came in as an organizational development manager. And then I moved, because I spoke Spanish, then I went down to Chile. No, I'm sorry, not Chile, to Peru. And then I brought together a bunch of leaders from Mexico, Peru, Brazil, and all. and then trained them. And then all of a sudden I became the HR contact for Latin America. So then when I went to Colgate, fast forward a few years later, it was easy for me to raise my hand to say that I would work globally because I had already career planned myself and branded myself. This is where branding comes in, where people need to brand themselves in a broader way, not to just go in and say, I'm just going to learn small pieces. Do you know that the jobs of tomorrow don't even have any titles right now? We need people who can work across different areas, who can understand different aspects of the organization, no matter how big it is or how small it is. So if you're working with an NGO, then what you can do is you're in the marketing. I can help you to work on raising monies and doing benefits, or I can work with you in communications. I can work with you so that you can learn a little bit more about a specific program. You can do this in any organization that has different compartments that are set up by setting them lateral. Like moving is not always up. This is the other thing. We have to negate the fallacy that in order to move, I have to move up. You can
What lateral moves has such a negative connotation. Oh, I'm not going to take a lateral move. But what you're saying is there's a lot of benefit to that lateral move
because you're broadening them, and I can still pay them. I can set up the pay grades, right? Because when you have different organizations, you have maybe 4 or 5 different pay grades. So I can set up the grading system so that person is still going to be paid. And then I can talk about where that position, after 3 to 4 moves, where that position can wind up. So I was working with an individual who was in the public relations area. That's on the consulting side. And then she decided to go with another company. Sometimes, hey, this is the other thing. Sometimes the moves that you're going to make, I mean, yeah, I'm a company person, but the fact is that sometimes you have to work in a few different organizations to get to where you want to get to. So your career doesn't have to, gone are the days where you have to have a gold watch and say 30 to 40 years at a company. Your career in the future is going to consist of working in different companies. That is your career plan. It's not just one organization. You're only thinking narrowly if you say, oh, I guess I would work at one organization the rest of my life. Maybe what I want to do is I want to learn different industries. So
Philip, I'm fired up. You're fired up. This is great. Jamie saying I could what a wealth of information. I could listen to Philip all day. People are just, yes, Philip. Just preach. Dawn Crawford checking in, Creative Housing Solutions, Minneapolis. What's up, Dawn? It's good to see you last week. Chris is over here, active, love it. Chris is saying, no, I wasn't asking for my career advice. Next 2 or 3 moves. I was reiterating what Philip said. Shout out to Vera at Colgate. She was helpful when I entered the mobility space. People are giving some shout outs here. Elena, Philip, thanks for mentioning the value of cross-training and cross-pollinating employees so that they can think more broadly about their roles and connection to the business. It creates more innovation when colleagues intentionally work together and learn from each other. This conversation has come full circle because this cross-pollination, again, I think it happens easier when we're in the same building, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's tools out there that make it more effective. One of the tools we've been using at my small company that's distributed is Wonder. So we have a virtual office we go into, and we're in there and we can kind of go into each other's bubble and kind of knock on the door, so to speak, and say, hey, you're around and I want to run something by you. So I'd love to hear if anybody else has found any collaboration and cross-pollinating tools out there to use in this virtual environment. Richard has a question for you, Philip. He says, is there a traditional classic cultural career track geographically for example, North Americans to become effectively globally? So like a recipe, maybe, does it differ for someone starting a career in some other part of the world? Maybe I can rephrase this into, what is the recipe for career mobility, would you say, Philip?
I think the recipe to career mobility is, even if you can do a short-term project in another place, wherever it is, do it in a different cultural framework than the one that you are operating in. So, for example, if you're working in a developed part of the world, uh, then figure out what's happening in the emerging market. If you're working in the Eastern Hemisphere, what about the Western Hemisphere? So, I think that the best way to think about it, is to try to get an experience in another place in a different cultural framework that helps you to think differently and approach the business that you're in a very different way than you're doing right now. And there's no one way. The good news is that the recipe, it's like there's so many options that you have, in terms of this. I mean, like I said, I can talk about 60 countries where I've moved from one person to one place to another. I did talk about a few examples. The best example is moving people outside of the cultural framework that maintains where they are and that introduces them to something that's different.
What I'm hearing you say, if I may paraphrase, is global mobility is career mobility. If you want to get ahead in your career, and it might require some side steps up, kind of thing, but if you want to get ahead, really finding those assignments and projects and getting other experiences in other locales really is the way to the C-suite. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. When I was at Colgate, right? So I was started out in a U.S. company. And what I wanted to do, I wanted to move to Europe right away, right? The CEO at the time, who actually was mentoring me, Mary and a few other people know who I'm talking about. He said, "Look, we're going to be developing a number of new businesses in the emerging market. That's Eastern Europe. This is when the Berlin Wall came down. This is all throughout Africa, North, South, East, and West, French and European ports, and also throughout the Middle East, through Turkey and Saudi and all of that. Go there first, then learn the emerging market, then go to Latin America, which has a mix of developed and emerging market, and then we'll move you over to Europe." So that way I was better prepared. I mean, that to me, that was like an ideal way to help me to be a global citizen. My knee-jerk reaction of some people is, "Oh, I'm American, so let me go over to Canada, then I'm Australia." No, go somewhere different so you can learn something different. Increase the diversity of your think with cross-cultural citizenship and being a true global leader.
I love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. Natalie says desire might be in the recipe. You got to have the want to and the desire. I mean, it's not easy to move to places where you don't know the language and don't know the culture.
No, it's not. But you know what, though? By moving over there, you appreciate that there are different ways that people live, their habits. The way to market to them is different. So, for example, you go over to South Africa and you see, well, everything isn't just happening in Joburg into the big company. You want into the big city. What you want to do is you want to go beyond that, to maybe to some of the other southern regions. Or if you are in Brazil, you don't want to just stay in the big city in Rio. You want to see what's happening in the favelas, which are the shanty towns. So that way you can understand how to market there and how people consume there. I mean, those things really broaden your experience. So that way you can be truly global in terms of how you operate.
So we've talked about getting the experience through mobility. And I think, honestly, you're just a walking, talking case study for global mobility. And I appreciate you sharing that insight, both as a person who kind of, oversaw, a very mobile global population, but as also a person who is themselves a product of global mobility. But you've also talked about personal branding quite a bit. And this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, as well as a lot of the folks who are on this call right now. What are your thoughts? We don't have a lot of time, but let me ask you this. What advice would you give to people who are watching this right now about creating a personal brand?
One is to think about what is the distinctive competency that you bring to a situation that makes you different and more impactful than others who are who you work with or who you're relating with. And so for example, for me, I said the distinctive competency that I wanted to have as an HR person was to be truly global with my experience, understanding different languages and different cultures. That makes me different, and that makes me more impactful. So you need to see what is that little little je ne sais quoi, little piece of stuff that makes you much stronger and impactful in certain ways that you're contributing to an organization. And I mean, that's the biggest piece. I think that's, I mean,
I love it.
In a very simple way, I always find that distinctive competence, and not just being competent, so like quickly, a lot of people, they came out, quick example with my son, a lot of people came out of a B school and they said, oh, I want to do investment banking, so, but then what he said as we talked is that I'm going to do investment banking in the UK, but then in South Africa, in the Southern Cone. So that way I understand the emerging market. I mean, so that made him distinctive. And now what he's doing, he's a venture capitalist in the sustainability area because he brings that sensibility to what he's doing. I mean, so there are a few examples like that I can talk about.
That's a great point. I was talking to somebody earlier. You're taking a broad skill and then you're applying it to a niche, either industry or geography, like finance, South Africa, right. For instance, right? So that's an interesting confluence of skill sets and experiences right there. That creates a very interesting personal brand.
Yeah.
Philip, people are just loving the talk. They're loving the passion. Philip makes the information so interesting to listen to. This is the feedback that we're getting right now. I second that. Your passion is palpable. Philip, I appreciate you being here. I want to just give you the opportunity. Do you want to leave folks with maybe one last thought to chew on?
The thought that I would leave people with is that this new normal can only be impactful if we think about what we can do differently than we did before and bring that with our unique way of innovating and creating change, first starting with ourselves and then changing those organizations and teams and people that we work with.
Love it. Fantastic. Great advice. Thank you so much to everyone who's out there, who is watching us today. All the comments have been tremendous. Hit that like button, throw a little love out there to Fort Lauderdale, to Philip Berry, President, Philip Berry and Associates. Philip, thank you so much for being here on Love+Relo today.
And all my friends out there too, who I've had for years in different sectors there. It's great to see that. A life well lived is a life with friends and people supporting you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I echo that. Thank you everyone, and thank you, Philip, again. We will see you again tomorrow.